Once this video ends, you'll be much more ready to tackle Pressure's newest update. Roblox Pressure's Half a Slice of Cake update brings the freshest replayability we've had ever, with new entities, room types, modified modes, mechanics, and more. In this video, I'll be sharing 25 essential tips to help you conquer this update, such as mastering new entities like Conundrum and GOM, new room types and how to use them, the best Kroner grinding strategies, key tips for getting the new badges, where to start with modifiers, and so much more. Seriously, this video has so much info you'll need. Let's get straight into it. First, let's start with something fun, free stuff. If you go to the shop for even the smallest moment, you're going to see how expensive a lot of the new skin bundles are and a lot of the other stuff in the shop. And you're going to be wondering, how in the world am I going to get the Kroner that I need for all of this? And we're going to answer that question soon, so don't you worry. But for now, let's start with something exciting, a head start. The Roblox Pressure developers released a patch notes for this update, and in those patch notes, they released two new codes, which are as follows: Modifiers and Movies, and Wawa. Both of these codes are useful. The first one gives 2,500 Kroner, and the second gives 1 revive token. Now obviously you can use these however you would like, but the 2,500 Kroner boost is huge, especially when you compare that to the prices. You can use this however you'd like, but I'd recommend using it on getting a ton of the new charms. You can also get a skin or two with it. You can do whatever you want with it really, but the point is this is an amazing head start that you need to do first. Redeem these codes before you do anything else. The second thing we'll be covering is on one of the most exciting changes, which might not seem huge at first, but once you think about it, is one of the greatest changes ever. Defibrillators can now be recharged. Previously, in other updates, you would use a defibrillator and it would immediately go poof, be broken, it'd be gone, you would not be able to use it again. And if you wanted to revive a friend with a defibrillator again, you would either have to wait until you somehow got lucky enough to get another one, or you would just have to wait for another run. But now, let's say you use a defibrillator, it will, instead of going away, stay in your inventory and be at 0%. And as you mentioned, they can be recharged now, which means that if you get a battery, or more specifically 5 batteries, you can recharge a defibrillator to full, making it completely usable again. This means that, yeah, you'll have to find 5 batteries, and each one battery charges for 20%. Now you might be wondering, this is really hard to get. 5 batteries? How am I going to do that? And I would agree with you, but this is where Sebastian's shop comes in. As you hopefully know, Sebastian's shop guaranteed sells batteries, an infinite supply of them. Each battery, no matter how many times you buy it, will always cost 50, which means that if you get to around door 50 and have 250 Kroner, you are virtually guaranteed a full regeneration of the charge of a defibrillator, which means that this has a very, very extended value. Let's say that you're playing in a run with 3 people and each person buys a defibrillator. Whether you use it or not before door 50, all each person needs to do is get 250 research, which is, I would say, pretty doable before around door 50. Once you get to the shop, each person will buy 5 batteries, and obviously if they found a battery, they would only have to buy as much as they need to get 5, but the point is, it will always be there for them. This means that once everyone has 5 batteries, you essentially will be able to use your defibrillators guaranteed at least 6 times total, because each person has 1, and each one defib can be used twice. Do you see why this is very useful? This is probably one of the most amazing changes ever, and for literally any run, for badges or modifier runs, any run of any kind, including this badge really sucks, will hugely benefit from this strategy. So make sure that you're always buying those defibrillators, buying the batteries that they need, and never taking them for granted. Also, defibrillators now drop upon death. Previously, in some of the updates, if you died with a defib, it would disappear with your dead body, which means it could not be retrieved, but now it drops along with every single other item that you have, so you don't need to manually drop them anymore. Third, Pressure developers added a completely new healing item called the NeoStyk. A NeoStyk is a green and white pill which looks pretty similar to a battery, except it's a healing item instead. The NeoStyks were added to both modified and regular runs, which means you can casually find them while looting now, just like batteries. NeoStyks, each one NeoStyk, will heal you for 20 HP, and you can hold a max of 5 on you at once, just like batteries. Which means, for example, let's say that you're at 1 HP and you have all 5 NeoStyks you can possibly hold. You can literally heal yourself to full health, 100 HP, in a very brief amount of time. Do keep in mind though that if you're playing a modified run and you have the natural resistance modifier turned on, it's only going to heal you for 10 HP per NeoStyk, but this is still very useful. More on those modifiers later, but the point is NeoStyks are very useful, and if you ever see them while looting, you should never ignore them. Real quick, if you're enjoying this video so far, it would mean the world to me if you subscribed. I am on a mission to help as many Pressure players as I possibly can, and even the smallest interaction helps. Liking, subscribing, hyping, sharing, anything you can do will help me greatly. I have so many videos on the channel, including guides, challenge videos, weekly live streams, and so much more. I would love to have you be a part of it. In this update, we also get 3 new room types, 2 of which are returning and 1 of which is completely new. Let's get into all 3. The first is the sewers room type. This is a returning room type which was already removed. It was originally intended to be for a grand encounter, and it's probably still going to be added as a new grand encounter later, but for now we have it in this new update and it is back and better than ever. The sewers is a huge room type, one that has a sort of misty fog over it and has a lot of branching paths. As you walk through this room type, you're going to see that there are 2 paths you can go in, or 2 sides you can choose as you progress, and both of these sides are correct. You might worry about there being fake doors, but both of these are real, they are not fake. There are a lot of places you can get away from regular anglers, and there are some PSSs, so it's a pretty decent room type. The next room type is the back area, and this is another one of those returning room types, which is so good to see back in the game. This room type was previously removed because it was way too buggy, but just like the sewers, it's back and it is so much better. The back area, as you'll notice as you walk through it, has 2 paths as well. You can either go up or down. Both of these lead to the next room, so it's correct no matter what, and neither of these are fake. However, this is not necessarily the safest room type, as there's a lot of spaces for landmines, there's a lot of spaces for fake lockers, and it's probably the most maze-like room type out of any room type we have right now. But it's also not impossible to get through quickly if you have sprints, and it's also pretty quick if you know what you're doing. The next room type is employee accommodation, which in my opinion is probably the most exciting out of all of these 3. First off, because this is the newest room type, it's completely new and it's been teased for a while, and the second reason is because in my opinion, this is the next best heavy containment, because in each room you go in, you're virtually guaranteed to have at least 1 and sometimes multiple side rooms for you to go in, which are completely safe. These side rooms are amazing for multiple reasons. Number 1, they normally have beds, and beds, similar to lockers, can now be hidden under. They're functionally the same, which is amazing. Second, these room types have side rooms upon side rooms, which in other words means you can either hide in closets or you can hide in bathrooms, which is also very, very safe and should be fully secure from Pandemonium unless you have certain modifiers turned on, but I digress. The next thing that makes these room types amazing is that they're perfect for looting. They have new chests now that you can open, which can have things, you know, the normal loot. They can have flash beacons, research, anything that could be of use. But honestly, as you can tell, this is such an amazing room type. There are rooms everywhere and there's so much to work with. So these 3 room types are going to be encountered by you a lot. Obviously, make sure you get used to them, keep playing so that you know how to survive them, and make sure to take advantage of their good parts. Next, tripwires were just made a lot more easy to deal with. Previously, if you were to walk over a tripwire, it would immediately explode and you would be sent flying and taking damage as normal. And this is still the case, however, there is a new way to avoid them now. If you crouch, in other words, you're not standing up, you're not running, you're just crouching as you're walking through the tripwire, it will not trigger, which means that you'll be completely safe. This means that it can be a lot easier to instinctually avoid tripwires. For example, you can preemptively not even look and just crouch while you're walking through doorways if you don't have a lot of visibility or if you want to be extra safe. Either way, this provides a very, very safe and doable way to avoid tripwires, and it makes it a lot more doable in the harder challenges. Wall dwellers have been completely changed, but they are not as scary or hard to deal with as you might imagine. If you've been looking at my recent shorts, or if you've been looking at Urban Shade's Twitter posts making teasers on this new concept, wall dwellers have been changed to look a lot more scary and to fit a lot more into the Pressure universe. Right now, you'll see them in game holding wall panels on their flesh, which they will use to hide, and you're going to have to deal with this if you encounter them in game. But as mentioned, they're not too bad to deal with. Similar to other wall dwellers in the previous updates, you will have to look behind you all the time to avoid them. But when you eventually find the new wall dweller, instead of it just immediately running away, as mentioned, it's going to hide behind those panes. You have to keep looking at the wall dweller until it eventually gets upset and runs away. This is something you're forced to do, and this can be an issue, especially if you're dealing with modifiers, but make sure you do it if you want to avoid that insanely scary jump scare. The rarest room in the game is now back, and it's slightly different. As of Worth the Wait Part 1, the rarest room type was one room in particular. It was rarer than the back rooms, it was rarer than Thor's hammer, it was rarer than basically any room you could think of. Specifically, it was a room that had a lot of little goodies in it. It had a sign saying congratulations, basically saying good job on finding it and to get a good photo for the wiki. It also has a gold outline of a wall dweller, along with a squiddle figurine and photo, along with a couple other things. This is basically the same room type in this new update, except there's one key thing that's different. If you look right here, there is now a badge that basically awards you for getting this room in what it says, Worth the Wait Part 2. This tells us two things. The first thing is that the pressure developers are absolutely amazing. Their attention to detail is superb. The second thing it tells us is that this update, which is called Half a Slice of Cake, is also considered to be Worth the Wait Part 2, as many of you may know. This just officially confirms it. Now that you've seen this tip, try and get this room type yourself and see if you can get it faster than I did, because I got this room type for this video. This is my footage and I'm proud of it. See if you can get it too. Pandemonium is a lot more common now. In past updates, we would typically only see him about once before door 100 and about once in the Ridge, but now there are a lot more modifiers which change up that status quo. There are modifiers which increase the amount of node monsters, removing anglers which force variety, and also only result in Pandemonium spawns. These modifiers are crazy, but the point is, Pandemonium is so much more common, and he can even spawn back to back, room to room in some instances, such as the clip shown on screen. If you are very used to only seeing Pandy sometimes, break that habit, because you need to be ready to get minigamed or to save spot a lot more now. The new modifier system is crazy, but here's a tip to help you get started. In order to get the new modifier badges, you need to, in a modifier run, turn on enough modifiers to justify a certain star ranking. Each time you turn on a new modifier, based on how difficult it is, you're going to be given a certain amount of increased Kroner Gain, and for each star rank, you need to reach a certain threshold. Here is every single threshold. For the 1-star modifier runs, you need 60% increased Kroner Gain or above. For 2-star runs, it's 125%. 3-star runs are 200%, and 4-star runs are 350%. You're going to need to practice with the easy and even hard modifiers so that you get used to which ones are going to be easiest for you in order to reach these thresholds. Make sure you get as much practice as you can, because you're going to need it. As you get better and better at doing modifier runs, you're going to want to go for the highest amounts of Kroner increase percentages that you can possibly go for. However, there is a limit. The highest you can possibly go is 500%. This is a hard cap, regardless of what modifier combination you use to get to that percent. So in other words, make sure that you're choosing your modifiers carefully. Also, make sure you're capitalizing on this once you're eventually good enough at these runs, because this is how you're going to buy every single skin bundle and go for 100%. The gachapon, in other words gambling, is probably one of the most exciting parts of the new 3D shop, and you're going to want to go for every single charm as you're doing this process. There is a very specific amount of Kroner you need, specifically 5,075 Kroner to get all 203 charms. This might sound like a lot, but honestly this can be very quick to get, especially because if you're using that free code I mentioned in the beginning, you're basically halfway there already. And then to get that remaining Kroner, you could do a couple 3, maybe 4-star modifier runs once you're good enough at them to get the rest. This literally means that you could get all 203 charms within the first week of the update if you're grinding for long enough. And this also means that getting the rest of the skin bundles aren't as bad as you might imagine. So have this cap in mind and go for those charms as fast as you can. Now let's get into the newest entities of this update, starting with Conundrum. My goodness, Conundrum is probably my top favorite entity of this entire update, aside from another entity which we'll get into in a little bit. But for now, let's talk about why Conundrum is so amazing. In order to unlock Conundrum in your runs, you need to beat your first 1-star modifier run. From there, you'll gain access to a modifier called Guest Stars Conundrum. When you start a run with this modifier active, you're going to see a timer ticking down to 0, which is normally going to be around 3 minutes. The entity, the Overseer, is going to be the one doing the counting, which is another entity within the Conundrum's challenge universe. Once that timer reaches 0, Conundrum's going to pop in your screen, do a little bit of yapping, then the Overseer is going to count you down from 3, 2, 1, 0, and then the minigame begins. And no, this is not Pandemonium's minigame, the guy who loves expendables at door 30. What? This is completely different. Waves of masks will be circling you, and your goal is to find the odd one out. This normally is pretty easy, but it gets really difficult later. Here are some tips to know what to expect. There are going to be 4 certain options you're going to have to look for. The first is an obvious color difference. For example, if there are green masks, look for the red one. The second option is a slightly different color hue. For instance, if there are green masks, you'll have to look for a slightly darker version. The third is a facial expression difference. If all of them are laughing, look for the one that's sad. And then the last one, all of them are going to look the exact same, except one of them is going to have eyes. Very tiny eyes, which are so hard to see. And all of these can be difficult, and it gets slightly more difficult as the game goes on. Here are some ways to approach it. My way that I started with is starting from the top row, looking at every single mask and working your way down. This is a procedural approach that can help you approach it calmly, and it can help you get it pretty quickly. Another way to do it, especially for the eyes one, which is the most difficult one, what I like to do, let's say that you're looking at the 2 rows that are moving in the same direction. If they're moving to the left, move your screen to the left. This will effectively slightly slow the movement of those masks, which can help you look for the eyes a little bit easier. Regardless of what you choose to do to look for this mask, make sure you get get good at it and get a lot of practice, because not only is Conundrum not lethal, but he can lead to getting some modifiers that can help you get higher Kroner percentages. As mentioned, when you fail his challenge, he will add a new random modifier to your run, which will be hidden until the end of that run. This reminds me a lot of DD from Ultimate Custom Night. What is bro doing in this game? But anyways, another tip that you should keep in mind is if you see that the timer for Conundrum is close to 0, do not open the next door. The reason why is when you open the next door, it lowers the node timer for the next entity to spawn. In other words, it just makes it more likely, which means that if you do not open the door, you're giving yourself a higher chance of being able to put your undivided attention towards Conundrum. Keep this in mind. GOM is one of the craziest entities of this entire update, and he's a contender for my favorite. But here's how to avoid him. GOM will have a timer at the top right of the screen, kind of similar to Conundrum, which will count down to 0, which is going to be around 1.5 minutes. When it is 0, you have to be in a locker or else GOM will damage you. GOM is not an insta-kill. However, if you let him get you enough times, he's basically a run-ender. So you got to make sure you know how to avoid him. But something to keep in mind is that you actually have a good amount of wiggle room in terms of dealing with him. For example, when that timer reaches 0, the timer is going to disappear and you're going to have about 3 seconds to get into a locker. You have until that rift is just about fully open to get inside. In addition, once he opens his mouth, which is basically his sort of taunt before he closes the rift he creates, you can actually leave basically as soon as he opens his mouth without getting killed. Use this wiggle room in order to capitalize on the very limited time that you have. Eyefestation was slightly changed. Here's what you need to know. Eyefestation, whether she is enraged, outraged, or completely normal, will always damage you if you look at her as usual. However, if you are standing directly at the window that she is looking into, you will now take proximity damage, which will happen regardless of whether you're looking at Eyefestation or not. This is something that can be a problem, particularly in keycard rooms where Eyefest is looking inside, because there are certain instances where you need to go very close to Eyefestation to look for a keycard. If you're low HP, keep this in mind so you don't get caught off guard. There are also new Eyefestation voices. For example, she's going to mimic Sebastian, so don't let this catch you off guard either. Dozer and Doppel are two of the newest entities added as part of the Grace and Pressure collab. Here are some tips to avoid them better. Dozer will not kill you if you're in a locker. In addition, Dopple will be paused in certain instances. For example, if you enter a locker, Dopple will be paused with a visual indicator above Dopple to show you that that's the case. In addition, if Dozer spawns at the same time that Dopple is chasing behind you, Dopple will be paused for a brief amount of time as well. Use these things to make dealing with Dopple and Dozer a little bit easier. There are so many skins added to this update that can be used on all light sources, but something that comes with this that you need to consider is that certain light skins will give off certain light colors, which can be better or worse for visibility. In other words, make sure you're choosing a light that creates a color that you're comfortable with. As an example, I use the Grace light, which creates a white light, which I think is easier for me to see, but not everyone would like that. And there are other light sources which could create red light, purple light, which can be better or worse depending on the circumstance. Make sure you choose one that's right for you. Keycards and password papers emit a buzzing sound when you're standing close to them, which can make them easy to find. This has always been the case. However, the buzzing sound has been slightly changed. Make sure that you're acquainted with what this sounds like, because this can be a very, very useful tool for you to avoid getting killed. For example, certain modifiers will cause it so that landmines will spawn more commonly in drawers. This can be a huge issue if you're looking for keycards and password papers, but a good way to avoid those landmines is to listen for that buzz so that you know which drawers you need to open. Make sure you know what it sounds like so you know what to expect. One of the best quality of life changes of this update is the new badge view. There is now a conditions and awards tab. Let's take the most exciting badge of this update, this badge really sucks, as an example. You're going to see that it has a unique description, which if you didn't know, every single badge now has a new description. Then there is a conditions tab, which lets you know how to get that badge and the requirements for it. One of the examples is, for example, you can use defibrillators in this challenge. The next tab is the awards tab, which will show you charms and jumpsuits which you'll unlock from getting this badge. This does mean that every single badge has some sort of reward. So if you have a badge already before this update and that badge gives you an award, you will have that reward going into this update. So keep this in mind and make sure you're looking at this new badge view and taking use of it. The Urban Shade developers did a lot of changes to allow immersion of this game to really be improved and enhanced. And one of the things they did is adding new light breaking sound effects. This means that you need to first understand what this means, and second, know what it sounds like so you're not getting disoriented by it. Although there are light flickers and the light flickers themselves sound the same, it is possible for lights to break on their own without a modifier, without a flicker or angle coming. So make sure that you keep this in mind and don't get too confused. However, it's good to be careful still. The new light holstering system is incredibly useful. In other words, you can holster a flashlight on your character's shoulder, which can allow you to use multiple items. This can be utilized in many ways. First off, you can have a light source, a flashlight, holstered on your shoulder while also using a sprint or a code breacher. Also, you can use 2 light sources at the same time. You can holster a flashlight, for example, and then use a gummy light. Because certain light sources, such as gummy lights and the splorg light, cannot be holstered, which means you can use a real flashlight while recharging a gummy light. Use this functionality to your advantage. Landmines and drawers are one of the scariest things teased for this update, and they are now here in all of their glory to explode all of ourselves. But there are many ways you can actually counteract this new mechanic. If you are to notice a landmine in a drawer the moment you open it, if you back up fast enough, you can avoid it without a sprint and without speed increases of any kind. This can be very useful and can also be done with tripwires if you have a sprint activated. So make sure you're being mindful of this. No? Get it? No? Okay, I'll see myself out. Something you might notice while you're starting to do modifier runs. No grand encounters will be present in modifier runs of any kind. You will not see searchlights, you will not see firewall, and you will not see abomination. This means by extension that you cannot increase your win count while doing modifier runs. While doing modifier runs, you're only getting Kroner and increasing your 4, 3, 2, and 1 star win counts. This means that you have to approach these runs differently, and it does mean these runs might feel longer. Keep this in mind. When getting started with modifier runs, you're going to have a lot to practice. Here are some easy mod recommendations for you guys. The first one is up the hate, which means no monsters will spawn much more often. In my opinion, this is a very easy trade-off because you'll get more practice with avoiding anglers, and it honestly won't feel much different. The next is tight security, which means that locked doors will need a passcode. This basically means you're going to have password papers more often, but that doesn't mean that keycards aren't going to show up, which means this really doesn't change anything. Natural resistance means that health items get reduced HP, which, you know, is opinion based, but you're not going to feel much of a difference if you have medkits and even the NeoStyks. If you have enough of them, this really won't make much of a difference. The Redeemer minigame harder modifier is a no-brainer because you're rarely going to get Redeemer, and even if you do, you're just spamming E. There's not much of a big difference with this modifier. Free trial means that every 15 minutes you'll be forced to watch an ad. This is really not that bad of a modifier to turn on because it's, after all, only every 15 minutes, and it gives a hefty 10% increase, and plus you should be doing it to support the devs anyways. The next 3 I'll recommend is navigation malfunction because all it does is help you not know what part of the run you're at, but that's all it does. You're still going to be able to know which door is correct, and you're still going to be able to get through the run with not much of a change. The next 2, which are very easy, is glue and door stuck, because these 2 modifiers are just going to change the way you interact with drawers and doors, and all you need to do is just interact with them a little bit more. And although this can be an issue in some circumstances, they're very easy modifiers in the general. These are some modifier recommendations that I have, but be sure to use any that you want to use, and let everyone know down below if you have any other recommendations. One of the last tips I want to give you guys is Kroner Gain tips. Obviously, as mentioned before, the shops have a crazy amount of Kroner that you need to get all the skin bundles and to get all the charms. But this really isn't that bad given that we have such hefty modifier increases. Here are my tips to get more Kroner. First off, make sure you're getting used to doing modifiers of the ones that are your favorites, and make sure you turn those on for every single modifier run you do. The more you turn on modifiers that you're good with, the more likely you are to beat those runs, which means the more Kroner you're going to be getting. And as you get to the 4-star modifiers, you can spam 4-star runs that are either very easy for you or have a high win rate for you and your friends, which means you can get Kroner very quickly to get 100% in terms of buying everything in the shop. The next thing, which you cannot be forgetting, is imaginary friends. If you join the group, the Urban Shade Roblox Pressure group, the remotes are only going to be costing 9 Kroner. This is an amazing investment because it increases your Kroner gain by the end of the run, because just like having a friend with you increases your Kroner gain, so does having an imaginary friend. So make sure you're getting both red and blue imaginary friend if you can to increase your Kroner gain. Aside from that, make sure you're always playing, because seriously, every single run, regardless of what happens, especially if they're modifier runs, will contribute to you getting Kroner. So it really doesn't matter how things go. Every run is an investment. And lastly, we're going to end with a good vibes tip. Grind, grind, and grind. Seriously, there are so much replayability aspects added to this game because of this update, and the more you play, the more you're going to experience and the more fun it's going to be. We now have access to 50-player modes, admin modes, we can spawn every entity, we have different versions of Pandemonium now that we can work with. There are so much more exciting parts of this game now, so just keep playing, have fun, and make it a good time. And with that, we've reached the end of my first video covering this new update. Thank you guys guys so much for watching. I hope it's been beneficial. We are going to be streaming this new update every week, every Saturday. Make sure you subscribe so you can be a part of that on this channel, and make sure that you are a part of all the other videos I've posted. Make sure you're benefiting from this update. Thank you guys so much. Live well and have a great day. I'll see you next time.